Hey everyone, I'm Lauren Pell and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know I normally focus on lighter topics, but this week something happened. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. She was a powerful and resilient woman who forced the court's hands to finally view women as more than just men's property. She was one of my many role models, and in dedication to her life, I wanted to produce a video overviewing her accomplishments and highlighting some facts about her that many people might not even be aware of. The late Supreme Court Justice has been known by many names: RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the notorious RBG, and even Kiki. But she was born as Joan Ruth Bader in the Flatbush neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York on March 15th in 1933. She was brought into the world as the second daughter of Nathan and Cecilia Bader. Her father, Nathan, was a Jewish immigrant from Odessa, Russia, who worked as a fur merchant during the height of the Great Depression. Her mother, Cecilia, worked in the garment factory and was born in New York to Austrian Jewish parents. Ruth received the nickname Kiki from her oldest sister, Marilyn, because she was a Kiki baby. RBG graduated James Madison High School at the age of 15, but did not attend her graduation because after a 4-year-long battle, her mother passed away due to complications of cancer the day before Ruth's graduation. Following high school, Bader attended Cornell University in pursuit of a Bachelor's of Art degree in government. While in attendance, she was a member of Phi Beta Kappa, and at the age of 17, she met her soon-to-be husband, Martin Ginsburg. On June 23rd in 1954, she graduated and was one of the highest-ranking females in her graduating class. Ruth became Mrs. Ginsburg a month after her undergraduate graduation and followed her husband to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where he was stationed as an officer in the U.S. Army Reserve. While in Oklahoma, she obtained a position working for the Social Security Administration office, but unfortunately she was demoted when she became pregnant with her first child, her daughter Jane, who was born in 1955. In the year following, Ginsburg became one of 9 women enrolled at Harvard Law in a class of over 500 men. During her attendance, the dean of Harvard Law invited all of the female law students over to his family home for dinner. During this dinner, he asked them, "Why are you at Harvard Law taking the place of a man?" Later on, he dismissed this claim by saying he was just trying to get to know his students better. Not to interject with my personal opinion, even though we know I love to do that, I just have to ask, if that was the case, why were there no male students there? I find this exchange especially jarring because Ginsburg was in the top 25 of her class. She made the Harvard Law Review. She was a hard-working, dedicated woman who well deserved her spot at that school. In addition to dealing with this discrimination, during her first year of law school, her husband Marty was diagnosed with testicular cancer. Ginsburg took up the task of keeping her sick husband up to date on all of his classes while raising their 2-year-old child and maintaining her role at top of the class. Like, talk about perseverance. Halfway through her education at Harvard Law, she transferred to Columbia Law School to follow her husband to New York City. Once there, she continued to be a hard worker and was on the Columbia Law Review. This made her the first woman to be on 2 major law reviews. She graduated from Columbia in 1959 and was tied for first in her class. Upon graduation, though, Ruth also faced gender discrimination when trying to find employment. Even Supreme Court Justice Frankfurter rejected RBG for a clerkship position in 1960 due to just blatant gender discrimination. She was eventually able to obtain a law clerk position with Judge Palmieri of the U.S. District Court of the Southern District of New York because her Columbia professor, Gerald Gunther, refused to recommend any other Columbia law students unless Palmieri gave her the opportunity. After working in this position for 2 years, she was given offers to other law firms, but at much lower pay rates than her male counterparts. Due to this, she pursued an associate director position for the Columbia Law School Project on International Procedure. Following this segment in her life, she accepted a professor position at Rutgers University teaching civil procedure. She was one of less than 20 female professors in the university and received tenure in 1969. While at Rutgers, she co-founded the Women's Rights Law Reporter, which is the first law journal in the US to report on solely women's rights. She eventually left this job to pursue a professor position at Columbia Law School in 1972. While there, she became the first female law professor to receive tenure and also co-authored first law school casebook on sex discrimination. She also directed the Women's Rights Project of the ACLU, which stands for American Civil Liberties Union, which is where she argued 6 landmark cases before the Supreme Court, of which she won 5. I'm gonna just give you guys a quick little tidbit on these cases, though I'm not gonna go into the full details and like bore you even more than I already probably am. The first case was Reed versus Reed, which extended the protections of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to women. Before this, we weren't protected like men were. And I'm not making this up. This was in 1971. Less than 50 years ago, we weren't protected under the 14th Amendment. Following that was Mortz versus Commissioner in 1972. This case was about a man who was denied a caregiver deduction because of his gender. So one thing that Ruth Bader Ginsburg liked to do is she would pick specific cases and very particular aspects of those cases, try to get men to see where gender discrimination affects both women and men. So that's why she chose a case where a man wasn't getting the same rights as a woman does, to see, oh, well, gender discrimination affects us too. I want that free money, like this is f***ed up. The following case was Frontiero versus Richardson, which happened in 1973. There was a statute that made it more difficult for a female service member to claim an increased housing allowance for her husband, while male service members were able to receive an increased housing allowance for their wives very easily. The following case was Weinberg versus Wessenfield, where a widower was denied survivor benefits under Social Security, but discriminated against the male survivors of workers by denying them the same protection as their female counterparts. Craig versus Boren challenged an Oklahoma statute that set a different minimum drinking age for women than for men. This was the first time the court imposed what is known as intermediate scrutiny on laws discriminating based on gender. The last case was Duren versus Missouri, which challenged the validity of voluntary jury duty for women on the ground that participation in jury duty was a citizen's vital government service and therefore should not be optional for women. The main point as to why she made it such a big deal, because I assure you there's probably some women out there who are like, oh god, why the f do I have jury duty today? If you're on trial, you can't have a jury of your peers if no women volunteer that day that fit your criteria. Like, people are already filtered out based off their biases, but if there's no woman to pick from, then your entire jury is going to just be men who already view you as an object. Ginsburg was appointed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia in 1980 by Jimmy Carter. She served on this bench for 13 years until 1993, when Bill Clinton elevated her to the United States Supreme Court. At the time of her nomination, Ginsburg was viewed as more of a moderate than a liberal, although that view of her quickly changed when she joined the more liberal wing of the Supreme Court. She was also only the second female to be on this bench and the first Jewish female to be a Supreme Court justice. She eventually even became the longest-serving Jewish justice. The United States Senate confirmed her by 96-3 votes, and she took her judicial oath on August 10th of 1993. Her style of advocating was considered by many as slow but steady and very calculated. Instead of creating sweeping limitations on gender discrimination, she attacked very specific violations one at a time. Legal scholars have even called her a rational minimalist. In 2006, Justin O'Connell retired, leaving Ginsburg as the only female on our Supreme Court from the years of 2006 to 2009 until Sotomayor was sworn in. The New York Times referred to this time as when Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg found her voice and learned how to use it. Now I'm going to just quickly go over some important Supreme Court cases from when she was serving. The first one being the United States versus Virginia. During this case, Virginia Military Institute, also known as VMI, had a male-only admissions policy, which violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. In addition to this, VMI is a state-run, military-inspired, and very prestigious institute that refused to admit women. And for Ginsburg, as a state institution, it should not be allowed to use gender to deny women the opportunity to attend VMI, especially with its unique educational methods. Like, it's just blatant gender discrimination, and it's hidden under the veil of tradition, as they all are. Another important case was Ledbetter versus Goodyear. Lilly Ledbetter filed a lawsuit against her employer claiming pay discrimination based on her gender under the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Due to the outcomes of this case, when President Barack Obama was elected in 2008, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was installed and became law. In another case, Steinberg versus Carhart, on the 40th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, the court struck down on Nebraska's partial birth abortion law. Ginsburg wasn't subtle about her views on abortion. She was very adamant that it's a woman's body, it's a woman's choice. The court should not be making that decision for her. It's already hard enough as it is. 16 years later, in 2016, the case of Whole Woman's Health versus Halstead was reviewed by the Supreme Court. This struck down on parts of the 2013 Texas law regarding abortion providers. Ginsburg stated that the law wasn't aimed at protecting women's health, but rather at impeding their access to abortions. Which, if no one remembers Roe versus Wade, legal abortions are safe abortions. The last court case I'm going to bring up is the Safford Unified School District versus Reading. The court ruled that a school went too far when ordering a 13-year-old girl to strip to her bra and underpants to be searched for drugs. This ruling was in 2009, a little over a decade ago. In 1997, RBG became the third woman to ever administer an inaugural oath when she administered it to the Vice President Al Gore for the second term under Clinton. She also holds the title of the first Supreme Court Justice to officiate at a same-sex wedding, which she performed in 2013. She even made it so the Supreme Court bar members could be given other choices to how their certificates are inscribed, because before she came along, they were all put in the year of our Lord, which obviously is going to offend other religions. Like, if you're Muslim or Jewish, you're not Catholic, you're not praising a Lord that in your eyes didn't exist. One thing that I found really interesting when reading up on Ginsburg is that she was actually really close friends with Justice Scalia, even despite their ideological differences. Like, they would go for dinners together, they would have chats. It's such an unlikely friendship, but I'm glad they had it because they did so much fun activities together. Like, they performed in operas together. Yeah, Ginsburg was a fan of opera. I didn't know that before I started this. Like, she's been my role model since I was little. She loves the opera. She would bring her family with her, she would bring her friends. She performed in a few of them in non-speaking roles, and then I believe she performed in one with Scalia. She was so amazing. And now we gotta talk about her health. Ginsburg wasn't the healthiest woman in the world. In 1999, she was diagnosed with colon cancer. She underwent chemotherapy and radiation therapy, and then during this time she didn't miss a single day on the bench. Following her first bout with cancer, she got weakened, so she took on help from Bryant Johnson, who was a former Army reservist attached to the U.S. Army Special Forces. He trained Ginsburg twice weekly in the justice-only gym at the Supreme Court. Ginsburg was so strong, she was able to do 20 push-ups on her 80th birthday. Like, I can barely do 5, and this 80-year-old woman was able to do them while also struggling with bouts of cancer. Like, her first one was in 1999, the colon cancer, and that inspired her to improve her fitness, and she was so strong, both emotionally and physically. I'm thoroughly impressed by her all the time. A decade later, in 2009, she had her second round with cancer, this time being pancreatic cancer. Luckily, this tumor was discovered in an early stage and she healed just fine. In 2018, Ginsburg fell in her office and broke 3 ribs. During this hospitalization, they found her third cancer. This time, they found cancerous nodules on her lungs. She underwent a left lobectomy, and for the first time in 25 years, she missed an oral argument while she recuperated. Like, she didn't even miss a day of court the day after her own husband died. This woman was dedicated. In August 2019, she received focused radiation on another tumor found on her pancreas. By January of 2020, she was cancer-free. But little did we know, by February of 2020, she was no longer cancer-free. But as we all know, because the reason I'm making this video, September 18th of 2020, Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away due to complications of pancreatic cancer. One quote that has been being thrown around a lot that was said days before her death was the following. My most reverent wish is that I will not be replaced until a new president is installed. We know I usually don't shy away from being political. I'm very loud about my opinions. And for a moment, I want to just pretend there are no sides. There's no Republicans, there's no Democrats. It's just human beings listening to a dying woman's request. She did so much for our country. Whether you agree with her views or not, she made America a better place. You know at least one person who has been greatly affected by this woman. I guess what I'm saying is we should take a human moment and just reflect on her request. Take a breath. Listen to her words for at least another week. The woman's not even in the ground and people are already screaming to replace her. In addition to that, and I know this argument has been said over and over again. In 2016, after Judge Scalia's death, Obama waited. Obama respected the Republicans' wishes to wait, and he waited. He was human, and he listened to the request. I'm just saying we might need to take a human minute. One thing I'm going to end this off with is my simple request, which I know this might be a bit of a reach, but I'm fairly certain RBG would have also agreed with. Make sure you are registered to vote, and please go vote. Make the world human again. We can only do it one vote at a time. Now that I've ended this on a really somber note, I want to thank you guys for paying attention to my ramblings on this amazing woman. Thank you guys for watching, and if you like this video, please actually like it in down there somewhere. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share it with someone else who appreciates RBG or is just looking for more information on her in general. Comment below if you absolutely hated this video or if you absolutely loved it, or if you want me to do more videos like this, because this took a lot of research and dedication and editing and oh my god, so much script writing. Like, normally I just kind of wing it and I write a loose script that's like, hey, buy this, play with it, talk about this. But this one I actually like wrote out a detailed script. If you see me looking down, it's because I have the script on my phone. Honestly, doing the research was really fun and I really liked doing this video. So you'll probably see me do a video like this again. I'm not sure on what topic, but I really enjoyed the research and the video style essay kind of thing. Comment below if you have any topics you want me to research further and chat about, or comment below if you'd rather me stick with my normal stuff that I do. I hope you guys have a great day, a great week, and I hope you all stay very safe. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.